So let's talk about Africa's ports. They're at this incredible critical crossroads. On one hand, they are the absolute engines of the economy. We're talking vital for trade, for development. But on the other hand, they're on the front lines of a global climate crisis that is threatening their very existence. So how can the continent navigate this? Well, let's dive in.
Just take a look at this. This right here, this is the lifeblood of an entire continent's economy. These maritime hubs are literally where Africa meets the world. They're just bustling with activity, connecting nations, and of course, creating livelihoods for millions. Okay, let this number sink in for a second. 90%. That's the share of Africa's entire import and export trade that passes through its ports. It's a staggering figure, and it really just drives home how unbelievably essential these facilities are. So it's clear these ports are an absolute economic lifeline, but, and this is a big but, that lifeline is under a lot of strain. So let's explore the incredible promise they hold versus the very urgent problems they're facing right now. You've really got a two-sided coin here. On one side, the promise is huge. Modernize the ports, and you create jobs, you forge stronger links to the global market. It's a win-win. But then you flip that coin over, and you see the problem. African ports have some of the lowest efficiency rates in the world. They're just bogged down by congestion and a serious lack of modern infrastructure and investment. So you've got all those internal challenges, but now they're being dwarfed by this massive threat coming from the outside. A rising tide of risk that puts that entire economic lifeline in jeopardy. And yeah, you guessed it, we're talking about climate change. And look, this isn't just some wild theory. It's a direct warning from the scientific community. Think about it. Where are ports built? Right on the coast. That means they are uniquely and directly in the path of the escalating climate crisis. They are on the absolute front lines.
And this threat really comes in three main forms. First, just direct damage to the infrastructure itself. Rising seas and bigger storms are literally tearing apart docks and roads. Second, your operations grind to a halt. Extreme weather means ships can't dock, schedules get thrown into chaos, everything gets delayed. And third, and this is huge, is the devastating impact on coastal communities, people facing flooding, displacement, and losing their incomes.
Now here's where the story gets a twist. It's not just a one-way street of the climate hitting the ports. We also have to flip it around and look at the port's impact on the climate. This is the environmental cost of all that essential growth. Let's focus on this number, almost 3%. That's the share of all global greenhouse gas emissions that the entire maritime transport sector is responsible for. And you can bet a significant chunk of that comes from activities happening in and around ports.
And if that number didn't grab your attention, this projection certainly should. If things continue business as usual, emissions from this sector are on track to skyrocket by up to 130% from 2008 levels by 2050. That's a trajectory that is just completely unsustainable.
And it gets even more complicated. The very process of expanding and modernizing ports to meet that economic demand, well, it creates its own environmental headaches. We're talking about habitat destruction, serious air and water pollution, and even the introduction of invasive marine species that can wreak havoc.
So, we're in a huge dilemma. You need economic growth, but it's contributing to an environmental crisis that then threatens that growth. It's a vicious cycle. Thankfully, people are developing some really innovative ways to navigate these rough waters and chart a much greener course.
At the heart of the solution is this concept, the Green Ports Policy. It's really a strategy to weave sustainability right into the DNA of port development and operations. So think renewable energy, better waste management, and actually planning for climate change instead of just reacting to it. And countries like Kenya, Tanzania, and South Africa are already starting to lead the charge.
So how do you actually make it happen? Well, here are the concrete steps. First, countries need to develop national action plans to get to zero emissions. Second, they have to modernize with resilience baked in, like building higher docks or restoring natural defenses like mangrove forests. Third, and this is crucial, all new port projects must be required to assess climate risks. And finally, you have to install early warning systems to protect people and property when extreme weather is on the way.
Okay, so that all sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like in the real world? Let's shine a spotlight on a tangible example of a green port that's already in action.
Meet Port Ngura in South Africa. You can think of this place as the hero of our story. It's a modern, clean, and efficient example of what's possible when you make sustainability part of the design from day one.
So let's get the quick facts.
Port Ngura is officially South Africa's only designated green port. It's been up and running since 2009, and it's a world-class deep-water hub, a true economic heartbeat for its region, connecting trade routes from all over the globe.
And this is where the green philosophy gets really tangible. I mean, it extends to every detail. Take their administration building. It's not just shaped like a ship to look cool. It harvests rainwater, it runs on solar panels, and it uses smart lighting to slash its electricity use. This is sustainability in practice.
Now, Port Ngura is a fantastic, inspiring example, but it is just one port. So what does the voyage ahead look like for the rest of the continent?
Well, the good news is that this movement is growing. We're seeing real progress in places like Nigeria, Ghana, Côte d'Ivoire, and Kenya. But we also have to be realistic and acknowledge that there are some very significant hurdles slowing down this critical transition across the continent.
And this brings us right back to the central dilemma. The opportunity is absolutely immense. African nations can collaborate and leapfrog old polluting technologies to build a whole new generation of green, resilient ports. But the challenge is just as big. There's limited access to modern tech, and most critically, there are huge financing constraints for these kinds of large-scale projects.
Which leaves us with this one final crucial question. The need is clear, the solutions exist, and the stakes honestly couldn't be higher. So can collaboration and innovation overcome the financial hurdles to forge a maritime future for Africa that is both prosperous and truly sustainable? That's the voyage that must be charted, and it has to start now.